Welcome to Barebones Camera, where we share the ins and outs of cinematography, breaking down real setups and taking you behind the scenes on professional film shoots. Today's show is sponsored by Kinefinity. Hey everyone, my name is Leigh Lisbão Underwood, and today I'll be chatting about test footage I shot with Kinefinity's new cinema lenses, the MAVO Primes. Kinefinity approached me about testing them out, together with the MAVO LF, and I was curious to find out how they perform since they are nicely built, cover full frame, and are quite affordable. I put together a number of tests to highlight a few attributes that I look for as a cinematographer, and in this video we'll have a look at field of view, perspective, bokeh, and sharpness in a day interior setting. I've done several more tests, which you can see in parts 2 and 3 on Barebones Camera. My goal here is not so much a lens review, but rather a tool for other cinematographers to compare the different qualities of these lenses with other options that are out there, which I think is more useful. So let's get started. Since the lenses are designed for full frame, the focal length range of 25 to 100mm in 5 lenses is pretty ideal. This offers roughly the equivalent field of view of an 18 to 70mm focal length range on a Super 35 sensor, which is pretty common in cinema lens sets. Now that so many cinema cameras are going full frame, it's nice that this lens set is staying consistent with that range. With this test, you can get a sense of the range of field of views offered by the MAVO Primes. There are a couple of other things we can notice here as we rack through the focus barrel. And those are focus breathing, focus roll-off, and bokeh. The focus breathing here seems to be pretty minimal. There's a small amount, but it feels natural and it certainly isn't distracting. The focus roll-off, which is what I'd call the gradual change between being in and out of focus, also has a nice quality. On some other lens sets, the change of sharpness when objects go in and out of focus can feel jarring because they have a very clinical, exact amount of sharpness, which is particularly noticeable on large digital sensors that are already very sharp. But here on the MAVO Primes, the focus roll-off feels like a pretty smooth, organic transition. And finally, to talk a bit about the bokeh in this scenario, with the lenses wide open, I'd say it looks pretty smooth without much artifacting, and the variable shape of those out-of-focus highlight points has a bit of a classic vintage lens look to me. This is maybe not the perfect test for bokeh because the light sources in the background there don't really have a single point shape. They have a sort of uneven shape to them since they are recessed lights. We'll have a closer look at the bokeh at different T-stops in parts 2 and 3. And here, you can see the difference in Super 35 mode, which gives a narrower field of view. It's still the most common sensor size out there, and the MAVO Primes can of course be used on cameras with this sensor size. Kinefinity tells me that they're working on an 18mm and 135mm to add to the set, which would round out the range very nicely, both for Super 35 shooters at the wide end and full frame shooters at the long end. So in this test, we can see how the perspective and representation of space changes when we use the MAVO Prime's range of focal lengths on the same shot size. In this test, you can see that the sharpness is quite good wide open, especially at the center, and improves as you stop down. You can also see some brightness vignetting within the first stop of the lens, which goes away by T4 and sometimes already by T2.8 when the whole image becomes more evenly illuminated. Personally, I'm actually a fan of a little corner softness and vignetting, because I think it gives the image some character, similar to that from classic lenses. It's also worth mentioning that while the lenses are marked as T2.0 across the set, except for the 25mm, which is T2.1, I noticed that they seem to appear a little bit more closed down than a true 2.0 when wide open. My exposure compensation was done with internal ND in this particular test, and in others I used ISO or shutter speed to compensate, always in full stops. With this compensation, the wide open end of the lens consistently appeared about a third darker than the higher full stops, but it's possible that the vignetting is giving the impression of the image being darker. This is not necessarily a flaw, especially because it's common in many other lens sets out there, but it is something that's good to know. In some places in these 3 test videos, I've compensated the exposure in color grading by about a third of a stop, so that it's easier to compare the images at different stops. That's it for this video. For more tests of the MAVO Primes, check out parts 2 and 3, where I'll look at other characteristics in day exterior and night exterior settings. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to catch that, as well as more behind-the-scenes looks at cinematography and filmmaking technology on set. Thanks again to Kinefinity for making this test possible. This is Barebones Camera, signing off.